Jana Medjaya said, "Thou possessed of a set king wealth, what did those high-souled ones, my grandsires, the illustrious Pandavas, do after obtaining the kingdom of Indra Prastha? How did their wedded wife, Draupadi, obey them all? How is it that no dissensions arose amongst those illustrious rulers of men, all attached to one wife, Krishna? Thou of the wealth of asceticism, I wish to hear everything in detail regarding the behavior towards one another of those rulers of men after their union with Krishna." Those scorchers of foes, the Pandavas, having obtained their kingdom at the command of Dhritarashtra, passed their days in joy and happiness at Kirandava Prastha with Krishna. And Yudhishthira ended with great energy and ever adhering to truth, having obtained the sovereignty, virtuously ruled the land, assisted by his brothers. And the sons of Pandu ended with great wisdom and devoted to truth and virtue, having vanquished all their foes, continued to live there in great happiness. And those bulls among men, seated on royal seats of great value, used to discharge all the duties of government. And one day, while all those illustrious heroes were so seated, there came unto them the celestial rishi Narada, in course of his wanderings. Beholding the rishi, Yudhishthira offered him his own handsome seat. And after the celestial rishi had been seated, the wise Yudhishthira duly offered him the arghya with his own hands. And the king informed the rishi of the state of his kingdom. The rishi, accepting the worship, became well pleased, and eulogizing him with benedictions, commanded the king to take his seat. Commanded by the rishi, the king took his seat. Then the king sent word unto Krishna of the arrival of the illustrious one. Hearing of the rishi's arrival, Draupadi, purifying herself properly, came with a respectful attitude to where Narada was with the Pandavas. The virtuous prince of Panchala, worshipping the celestial rishi feet, stood with joined hands before him, properly veiled. The illustrious Narada, pronouncing various benedictions on her, commanded the prince to retire. After Krishna had retired, the illustrious rishi, addressing in private all the Pandavas, with Yudhishthira at their head, said, "The renowned prince of Panchala is the wedded wife of you all. Establish a rule amongst yourselves, so that disunion may not arise amongst you." There were in former days celebrated throughout the three worlds 2 brothers named Sundar and Upasundar, living together and incapable of being slain by anybody, unless each slew the other. They ruled the same kingdom, lived in the same house, slept on the same bed, sat on the same seat, and ate from the same dish. And yet they killed each other for the sake of Tilotama. Therefore, Yudhishthira, preserve your friendship for one another, and do that which may not produce disunion amongst you. On hearing this, Yudhishthira asked, "Great Muni, whose sons were Asuras called Sundar and Upasundar, whence arose that dissension amongst them, and why did they slay each other? Whose daughter was this Tilotama, for whose love the mad-damned brothers killed each other? Was she an Apsara, or the daughter of an celestial? Thou whose wealth is asceticism, we desire to hear in detail everything as it happened. In thee our curiosity hath become great." Hearing these words of Yudhishthira, Narada replied, son of Prithia, listen with thy brothers to me as I recite this old history, exactly as everything happened. In olden days, a mighty deity named Nikumbiha, endowed with great energy and strength, was born in the race of the great Asura Hiranyakasipu. Unto these Nikumbiha were born two sons called Sunda and Upasunda. Both of them were mighty Asuras, endowed with great energy and terribly prowess. The brothers were both fierce and possessed of wicked hearts, and those deities were both of the same resolution, and ever engaged in achieving the same tasks and ends. They were ever shared with each other in happiness as well as in war, each speaking and doing what was agreeable to the other. The brothers never were unless they were together, and never went anywhere unless together. Of exactly the same disposition and habits, they seemed to be one individual divided into two parts, and with great energy and ever of the same resolution in everything they undertook. The brothers gradually grew up, always entertaining the same purpose, desirous of subjugating the three worlds. The brothers, after the initiation, went to the mountains of Vindhya, and wending there, severe were the ascetic penances they performed. Exhausted with hunger and thirst, with matted locks on their heads, and attired in barks of trees, long was the time after which they acquired sufficient ascetic merit, besmearing themselves with dust from head to foot. Living upon air alone, standing on their toes, they threw pieces of the flesh of their bodies into the fire. With arms upraised and eyelids fixed, long was the period for which they observed their vows, and during the course of their ascetic penances a wonderful incident occurred there. For the mountains of Vindhya, heated for a long course of years by the power of their ascetic austerities, began to emit vapor from every part of their bodies, and beholding the severity of their austerities, the celestials became alarmed. The gods began to cause numerous obstructions to impede the progress of their asceticism. The celestials repeatedly tempted the brothers by means of every precious possession and the most beautiful girls. But firmly wedded thereto, the brothers broke not their vows. Then the celestials once more manifested before the illustrious brothers their power of illusion, for it seemed their sisters, mothers, wives, and other relatives, with disordered hair and ornaments and robes, were running towards them in terror, pursued and struck by a Rakshasa with a lance in hand, and it seemed that the woman implored the help of the brothers, crying, "Save us!" But all this went for nothing, for firmly wedded thereto, the brothers did not still break their vows. And when it was found that all this produced not the slightest impression on any of the two, both the woman and the Rakshasa vanished from sight. At last the grandsire himself, the Supreme Lord, ever seeking the welfare of all, came unto those great Asuras and asked them to solicit the boon they desired. Then the brothers Sunda and Upasunda, both of great prowess, beholding the grandsire, rose from their seats and waited with joined hands. And the brothers both said unto the god, "Grandsire, if thou hast been pleased with these our ascetic austerities, and art, Lord, propitious unto us, then let us have knowledge of our weapons and of our powers of illusion. Let us be endowed with great strength, and let us be able to assume any form at will, and last of all, let us be mortal. Hearing these words of theirs, Brahma said, accept the immortality you ask for, you shall be given all that you desire. Solicit you some form of death by which you may still be equal unto the immortals. And since you have undergone these severe ascetic austerities from desire of sovereignty alone, I cannot confer on you the boon of immortality. You have performed your ascetic penances, even for the subjugation of the three worlds. It is for these marked deities that I cannot grant you what you desire. Hearing these words of Brahma, Sundar and Upasundar said, Grandsire, let us have no fear then from any created thing, mobile or immobile, in the three worlds, except one from each other. The Grandsire then said, I grant you what you have asked and said, even this your desire. And granting them the boon, the Grandsire made them desist from their asceticism, and returned to his own region. Then the brothers, those marked deities, having received those several boons, became incapable of being slain by anybody in the universe. They then returned to their own abode. All their friends and relatives, beholding those deities of great intelligence crowned with success in the matter of the boons they had obtained, became exceedingly glad. Sundar and Upasundar then cut off their matted locks and wore coronets on their heads, attired in costly robes and ornaments. They looked exceedingly handsome. They caused the moon to rise over their seat every night, even out of his season. And friends and relatives gave themselves up to joy and merriment with happy hearts. Eat, feed, give, make merry, sing, drink, these were the sounds heard every day in every house. And here and there arose loud uproars of hilarity mixed with clappings of hands, which filled the whole seat of the deities, who, being capable of assuming any form at will, were engaged in every kind of amusement and sport, and scarcely noticed the flight of time, even regarding a whole year as a single day. As soon as those festivities came to an end, the brothers Sundar and Upasundar, desirous of the sovereignty of the three worlds, took counsel and commanded their forces to be arranged, obtaining the assent of their friends and relatives, of the elders of the Daitya race, and of their ministers of state, and performing the preliminary rites of departure. They set out in the night when the constellation Magha was in the ascendant. The brothers set out with a large Daitya force, clad in the mail and armed with maces and axes and lances and clubs. The Daitya heroes set out on their expedition with joyous hearts. The Kharanas, chanting auspicious panegyrics indicative of their future triumphs. Furious in war, the Daitya brothers, capable of going everywhere at will, ascended the skies and went to the region of the Celestials. The Celestials, knowing they were coming, and acquainted with the boons granted unto them by the supreme deity, left heaven, sought refuge in the region of Brahma. And with fierce prowess, the Daitya heroes soon subjugated the region of Indra, and vanquishing the diverse tribes of Yakishas and Hakishasas, and every creature hanging the skies, came away. Those mighty cow warriors next subjugated the Nagas of the nether region, and then the inmates of the ocean, and then all the tribes of the Mlekhas. desirous next of subjugating the whole earth. Those heroes of irresistibly sway, summoning their soldiers, issued these cruel commands. Brahmanas and royal sages, with their libations and other food offered at grand sacrifice, increase the energy and the strength of the gods, their prosperity. Engaged in such acts, they are the enemies of the Asuras. All of us, therefore, mustering together, should completely slaughter them off the face of the earth, ordering their soldiers thus on the eastern shore of the great ocean, and entertaining such a cruel resolution, the Asura brothers set out in all directions, and those that were performing sacrifice, and the Brahmanas that were assisting at those sacrifices, the mighty brothers instantly slew. And slaughtering them with violence, they depart for some other place. Their soldiers threw into the water the sacrificial fires that were in the asylums of Munins, with souls under complete control. The curses uttered by the illustrious Rish in wrath, rendered abortive by the boons granted, affected not the Asura brother. When the Brahmanas saw that their curses produced not the slightest effect like shafts shot at the stones, they fled in all directions, forsaking their rites and vows. Even those rich on earth that were crowned with ascetic success, and had their passions under complete control, and were wholly engrossed in meditation of the deity, from fear of the Asura brothers, fled like snakes at the approach of Vingata Son. The sacred asylums were all trodden down and broken, the sacrificial jars and vessels being broken, their contents were scattered over the ground. The whole universe became a pit, as if its creatures had all been stricken down during the season of general dissolution. And after the rich had all disappeared and made themselves invisible, both the great Asura, resolved upon their destruction, began to assume various forms, assuming the forms of mad-dened elephants with temples hent from excess of juice. The Asura pair, searching out the rich who had sheltered themselves in caves, sent them to the region of Yama, sometimes becoming as lions and again as tigers, and disappearing the next moment. By these and other methods, the cruel Kopli, seeing the rich, slew them instantly. Sacrifice and stud ceased, and kings and Brahmanas were exterminated. The earth became utterly destitute of sacrifice and festivals, and the terrified people uttered cries of "Oh!" and "Alas!" and all booing and selling were stopped. All religions' rites ceased, and all the earth became destitute of sacred ceremonies and marriages. Agriculture was neglected, and cattle were no longer tended. Towns and asylums became desolate, and scattered over with bones and skeletons, the earth assumed a frightful aspect. All ceremonies in honor of the Pitris were suspended, and the sacred sound of Vashat and the whole circle of auspicious rites ceased. The earth became frightful to behold. The sun and the moon, the planets and stars and constellations, and the other dwellers in the firmament, witnessing these acts of Sundar and Upasundar, grieved deeply, subjugating all the points of heaven by means of such cruel acts. The Asura brothers took up their abode in Kurukshetra without a single rival. Then the celestial Rish the siddhas, and the high-souled rish, possessing the attributes of tranquility and self-restraint, beholding that act of universal slaughter, were afflicted with great grief, with passions and senses and souls under complete control. They then went to the abode of the grandsire, moved by compassion for the universe. Arrived there, they beheld the grandsire seated with gods, siddhas, and brahmas his around him. There were present that god of gods, Mahadeva, and Agni, accompanied by Vayu, and Soma, and Surya, and Sakra, and Rish devoted to the contemplation of Brahma, and the Vaikihanasas, the Valikhiliyas, the Vanaprastihas, the Marikhipas, the Ajas, the Avimudas, and other ascetics of great energy. All those rich were sitting with the grandsire, when the celestial and other rich, approaching Brahman with sorrowful hearts, represented unto him all the acts of Sunda and Upasunda. And they told the grandsire in detail everything that the Asura brothers had done, and how they had done it, and in what order. Then our celestials and the great rich pressed the matter before the grandsire. The grandsire, hearing everything they said, reflected for a moment and settled in his mind what he should do. Resolving to compass the destruction of the Asura brothers, he summoned Visvakarman. Seeing Visvakarman before him, the grandsire, possessed of supreme ascetic merit, commanded him, saying, "Create thou a damsel capable of captivating our hearts." Bowing down unto the grandsire, and receiving his command with reverence, the great artificer of the universe created a celestial maiden with careful attention. Visvakriti first collected whatever of handsome creatures, mobily upon the body of the damsel he created. Indeed, the celestial maiden that he created was almost a mass of gems, and created with great care by Visvakarman. The damsel, in beauty, became unrivaled among the women of the three worlds. There was not even a minute part of her body which by its wealth of beauty could not rival upon it the gaze of beholders. And like unto the embodied Sri herself, that damsel of extraordinary beauty captivated the eyes and hearts of every creature. And because she had been created with portions of every gem take into minute measures, the grandsire bestowed upon her the name of Tilotama. And as soon as he started into life, the damsel bowed to Brahman with joined hands, said, "Lord of every created thing, what task am I to accomplish, and what have I been created for?" The grandsire answered, "Go, Tilotama, unto the Asura, Sunda, and Upasunda. Amiably on, tempted them with thy captivating beauty, and conduct thyself there in such a way that the Asura brothers may, in consequence of the wealth of thy beauty, quarrel with each other as soon as they cast their eyes upon thee." Bowing unto the grandsire, and saying, "So be it," the damsel walked round the celestial conclave. The illustrious Brahman was then sitting with face turned eastwards, and Mahadeva with face towards the east, and all the celestial with the face northwards, and Rish with face towards all directions, while Tilotama walked round the conclave of the celestials. Indra and the illustrious Sitiranu were the only ones that succeeded in preserving their tranquility of mind. Exceedingly delirious as Mahadeva was, when the damsel was at his side, another face like a full-blown lotus appeared on the southern side of his body, and when she was behind him, another face appeared on the west. And when the damsel was on the northern side of the great god, a fourth face appeared on the northern side of his body. Mahadeva came to have 1,000 eyes, each large and slightly had dish, before, behind and on his flanks. And it was thus that Siti Hanu, the great god, came to have 4 faces, and the slayer of Vala 1,000 eyes. And as regards the mass of the celestials and the rich, they turned their faces towards all directions, as Tilottama walked round them, excepting the divine grandsire himself. The glances of those illustrious personages, even of all of them, fell upon Tilottama's body. And when Tilottama set out, beholding the wealth of her beauty, regarded the task as already accomplished. After Tilottama had gone away, the great god who was the first cause of the universe dismissed all the celestials and the riches. Meanwhile, the Asura brothers, having subjugated the earth, were without a rival. The fatigue of exertion gone, they, having brought the 3 worlds under equal sway, regarded themselves as persons that had nothing more to do. Having brought all the treasuries of the gods, the Gandhiharvas, the Yakshas, the Nagas, Hakshasas, and the kings of the earth, the brothers began to pass their days in great happiness. When they saw they had no rivals, they gave up all exertion and devoted their time to pleasure and merriment, like the celestials. They experienced great happiness by giving themselves up to every kind of enjoyment, such as women and perfumes and floral wreaths and viands and drinks and many other agreeable objects are in profusion, in houses and woods, in gardens, on hills, and in forests. Wherever they liked, they passed their time in pleasure and amusement like the immortals. And it so happened that, one day, they went for purpose of pleasure to a tableland of the Vindhya range, perfectly level and stone and overgrew with blossoming trees. After every object of desire, all the most agreeable kind, had been brought, the brothers sat on an excellent seat, with happy hearts, and accompanied by handsome women, and those damsels, desirous of pleasing the brothers, commenced a dance in accompaniment to music, and sweetly chanted many a song in praise of the marked pair. Meanwhile, Tilottama, attired in a single piece of red silk that exposed all her charms, came along, plucking wild flowers on her way. She advanced slowly to where those marked azuras were gathering as she walked kamikaras from the trees that grew along the riverside. The Asura brothers, intoxicated with the large potions they had imbibed, were smitten upon beholding that maiden of transcendent beauty. Leaving their seats, they went quickly to where the damsel was. Both of them, being under the influence of lust, each sought the maiden for himself, and Sundar seized that maid of fair brows by her right hand, intoxicated with the boons they had obtained, with physical might, with the wealth and charms they had gathered from every quarter. and with the wine they had drunk, mad damned without these, and influenced by wishful desire, they addressed each other, each contracting his bow in anger. She is my wife, and therefore your superior, said Sundar. She is my wife, and therefore your sister-in-law, replied Upasundar. And they said unto each other, She is mine, not yours. And soon they were under the influence of age. Maddened by the beauty of the damsel, they soon forgot their love and affection for each other. Both of them, deprived of reason by passion, then took up their fierce maces, each repeating, I was the first, I was the first. Struck the other, and the fierce Asuras, struck by each other with the mace, fell down upon the ground, their bodies bathed in blood like two suns dislodged from the firmament. And beholding these, the woman that had come there, and the other Asuras there present, all fled away, trembling in grief and fear, and took refuge in the nether regions. The grandsire himself of poor soul then came there, accompanied by the celestials and the great Rish, and the illustrious grandsire applauded Tilotama and expressed his wish of granting her a boon. The supreme deity before Tilotama spoke, desirous of granting her a boon, shall fully say it. Beautiful damsel, thou shalt home in the region of the Adityas. Thy splendor shall be so great that nobody will ever be able to look at thee for any length of time. The grandsire of our creators granting this boon unto her, establishing the three walls in Indra as before, returned to his own region. It was thus that Asuras, ever united and inspired by the same purpose, slew each other in wrath for the sake of Tilotama. Therefore, from affection, I tell you, ye foremost ones of Mahabharata line, that if you desire to do anything agreeably to me, make some such arrangement that you may not quarrel with one another for the sake of Draupadi. The illustrious Pandavas, thus addressed by the great Rishi Narada, consulting with one another, established a rule amongst themselves in the presence of the celestial Rishi himself, endowed with immeasurable energy. And the rule they made was that when one of them would be sitting with Draupadi, and of the other four who would see that one thus must retire into the forest for 12 years, passing his days as a brahmacharin. After the virtuous Pandavas had established that rule amongst themselves, the great Muni, Narada, gratified with them, went to the place he wished. Thus, Janamejaya did the Pandavas, urged by Narada, established a rule amongst themselves in regard to their common wife. And it was for this that no dispute ever arose between them.